Hello and welcome. I'm Ananya Datta and I'm back with another edition of Race to Power. Here's what's coming up in the next 30 minutes. Donald J. Trump is officially the Republican Party's nominee for a record third time. He has picked Ohio Senator JD Vance. We get you all updates from Milwaukee. Peru might see a high-profile comeback. A convicted former president is eyeing for the top job. Now, Monday saw hundreds and thousands of Trump supporters turn Milwaukee red. Amid slogans, chants and thundering applause, Donald J. Trump entered the forum with his ear bandaged. The Republicans have made Trump their official presidential nominee, and the former U.S. president has found his running mate in JD Vance. Here's a quick report on what went down on day one of the Republican National Convention.
Donald Trump drew cheers during the first night of the Republican National Convention on Monday, 2 days after a would-be assassin grazed his right ear with a bullet. Trump entered the Milwaukee venue with a bandaged ear as GOP delegates and faithful stood with a roaring ovation. Many chanted "fight, fight, fight" and pumped their fists, referencing Trump's reaction in the moments after he was wounded on Saturday at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. The former president mouthed the words "thank you" to the crowd before shaking hands with his freshly picked running mate, U.S. Senator JD Vance, next to him.
Our nominee for the 47th President of the United States.
Trump is due to formally accept the party's nomination in a primetime speech on Thursday to face Democratic President Joe Biden in the November 5th election, while Vance is scheduled to address the convention on Wednesday.
For the office of Vice President of the United States, Senator JD Vance.
The 39-year-old was a fierce Trump critic in 2016, but he has since become one of the former president's staunchest defenders, embracing Trump's false claims that the 2020 election was marred by widespread fraud. The Ohio senator is deeply popular with Trump's core supporters, but analysts have questioned whether he can broaden the ticket's appeal. He shares Trump's aggressive approach to politics, and his conservative statements on issues such as abortion could turn off moderate voters. The four-day convention began less than 48 hours after a gunman opened fire at the outdoor rally, killing one supporter. The 20-year-old suspect was a registered Republican. He was shot dead at the scene, and his motive remains unclear.
The chaos and voices outside the RNC venue were just as loud. Thousands of protesters had gathered to demonstrate against the RNC taking place in the city. According to reports, over 3,500 people marched through the streets of Milwaukee, holding posters and chanting slogans condemning Trump and his policies. Leading the protests were activists and organizations that spearhead women's rights and immigration issues across America.
I knew I had to come here. Women's rights need to be taken back. Our country is being threatened with someone who committed treason and his followers, and we have to get our country, keep our country safe the way it is now.
As day two of the ongoing RNC takes off, a slew of speakers are expected to take the podium today. Among the big names are Nikki Haley, who is expected to address the delegates in prime time. The former South Carolina governor was one of Trump's fiercest critics and the last presidential candidate standing against Trump to back down from the race. Meanwhile, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is also expected to speak at the convention today, as is Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who lost the vice president nominee race to Vance on Monday. And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani is joining us live from New York. Susan, good to see you as always. We know that Donald Trump is the Republican Party's presidential nominee finally, and he has picked JD Vance. What's to come in the next 2-3 days?
Yeah, as you mentioned, we are going to be hearing from Nikki Haley. We're going to be hearing from Ron DeSantis. The theme today at the RNC is Make America Safe Again. And we are expected also to hear from ordinary Americans, notably those who have been a victim of crime committed by illegal migrants here in the United States. So a lot will be talked about, not only regarding how to keep Americans safe, but we're also told that the Jewish American community has been facing a lot of threats, and that's going to be an aspect that's going to be discussed as well. So that's for today. And then, of course, Thursday is Donald Trump's big speech and ultimately the culmination of the Republican National Convention. But I think right now, all eyes are going to be on not only the former president and how he's recovering from that assassination attempt, but also JD Vance. He is really a rising star in the Republican Party, and there is going to be a lot of momentum after he was named vice president nominee for the Trump campaign.
All right, Susan, thank you so much for getting us all those updates from New York. And speaking of JD Vance, his pick was definitely a surprise for some. We decode his short political journey and what he brings to Donald Trump's corner. If someone told you in 2016 JD Vance is Donald Trump's running mate, you would have had a good laugh. But 2024 is all about surprises. Once a bitter critic of the former president, JD Vance has been named as the vice president pick. But the archives won't be kind to this duo. Because the Ohio senator has called Trump a lot of names. Idiot, a moral disaster, America's Hitler. In one sit-down interview, he said Trump's promises are the needle in America's collective vein. Trump is cultural heroin. He makes some feel better for a bit, but he cannot fix what ails them.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to determine our nominee for the office of Vice President of the United States, Senator JD Vance.
It took Vance about 6 years to transform from never a Trumper to a Trump loyalist. Vance believed that the 2020 election results were rigged and justified the January 6th riots.
They asked me, they said, well, wasn't January 6th the constitutional crisis? And I shook my head and I said, no. January the 6th, Donald Trump trying to challenge an election through constitutional means, that is the opposite of a constitutional crisis.
When Trump was busy getting in and out of the courtroom over the hush money trial, the Ohio senator said this.
What's going on inside that courtroom is a threat to American democracy, ladies and gentlemen.
Most recently, Vance indirectly blamed President Joe Biden's campaign for the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. He rose to fame through his 2016 memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, a coming-of-age book that turned out to be the perfect stepping stone into politics. He talks about young Vance growing up in poverty, violence, and drug addiction. His personal anecdotes about troubled relations with his mother and embracing Christianity late in his 30s have struck a chord with core Republicans. It remains one of the main reasons voters in Ohio embraced him as their senator. He wishes to bridge his personal challenges with those of Americans. Experts say he not only appeals to Trump's loyal base, but he even brings new voters into the red corner. 39 years young Vance represents a generation that perfectly balances Trump's 78, especially in an election year where the issue of old age is on the brink of eliminating a political veteran. Even if Vance might have the perfect resume, his better half definitely makes it a whole lot better. Usha Vance, child of Indian immigrants, born and raised in the suburbs of San Diego. Of all the people, she has managed to quote-unquote humble Donald Trump by her achievements. Graduating from law school, she's a well-established attorney. And as Vance gears up for the next 100 days of grueling campaign, he will need her counsel more often. Bureau Report, WION, World is One. And to take the story further, we are being joined by Katie Frost from Milwaukee. She is a Republican strategist. Ms. Frost, thank you so much for joining us here on WION. Good to see you. I want to talk to you about JD Vance, and I'll come to that in a minute. Let's talk about the man of the hour, Donald Trump. He is the official nominee of the Republican Party. What are you expecting from his speech?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be with you. I will tell you, it was absolutely electric inside the convention center last night. As Lee Greenwood was singing God Bless the USA, that is, one of our most common patriotic songs. It inspires Americans. And then to see President Trump enter with a bandaged ear, just such a sober reminder of what happened barely 48 hours before that. It was an unbelievable experience. And I think we're going to see a slightly different tone than you may typically expect from, say, a Trump rally. I had the honor of being in the center 8 years ago when President Trump accepted the nomination in 2016. So I think we'll see a slightly different tone. There's nothing like a near-death experience to give you a different perspective. And I think we're going to see him come in. He's going to be speaking about unity, and he's going to be looking forward, very much so. This is not going to be about relitigating what has happened before, but about assessing where we are as a country, what has happened under Joe Biden, and how it can change in the next 4 years in President Trump's next term.
Right. Ms. Frost, let's talk about JD Vance now. He's 39 years old. And to counter that, Donald Trump is 78 years old. Given that during this election, we have been talking a lot about the age issue, not just with Trump, but also Joe Biden. Do you think that this was a perfect balancing act to say?
Well, I do. As a millennial myself, it's incredible to see one of my peers being the vice presidential nominee. And you said right, JD Vance is 39 years old. He'll be turning 40 next month. And when he takes the oath of office in January, he will be the third youngest vice president in the history of the United States. And it's interesting to point out, you talk about age or how long someone has been in politics. When JD Vance was born, Joe Biden had already been in the United States Senate. He'd been elected 12 years before that. So you want to talk about age, realize that Joe Biden has been in elected office JD Vance's entire life. So it's definitely time to bring in a new generation of leadership. And I think we see that with JD Vance. He'll have a different perspective than some of his other peers in Washington. In the Democratic side, you have a group of leadership that is not going to let go to the next generation. You have people like James Clyburn, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer, and of course, right there at the top, Joe Biden. These people have been there for so long, and it's time for younger people to come in, and people who have a different perspective and are living in the world we inhabit now. The defining conflict of our generation, right. It's not Vietnam or the Cold War, it's the war in Iraq for Americans. We don't remember the boom of the Reagan years. We remember the economic downturn of 2008. So that's shaped our policy and our worldview, and I'm excited to see what it'll be to have someone like JD Vance, someone, like I said, from my generation in the high position of leadership and being the vice president.
All right, Ms. Frost, thank you so much for getting us your insights all the way from Milwaukee.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, unlike Donald Trump, his political adversary Joe Biden is fighting an uphill battle to prove his ability and fitness to contest the elections. And in his latest interview to NBC News, the US president remained steadfast on his decision to fight November's political battle. Biden said that he is not leaving the race, even though some Democrat leaders have expressed fears that he cannot win. Defending his decision, the 81-year-old has said that his mental acuity has been pretty damn good.
At the time there's very little focus on Trump's agenda. Yeah, that's right. Look, we knew this was going to be a close race from the moment he announced. The idea that we are in a situation where, if you look at all the polling data shows a lot of different things, but there's no wide gap between us. It's essentially a toss-up race. And I think one of the arguments that get made, you have the most successful presidency of any president in modern history, maybe since Franklin Roosevelt. Passed more major legislation no one thought could get done. We're able to put together consensus. We're able to unite NATO. We're able to deal with foreign policy. Why don't you just decide to rest on those laurels? And the answer is because the job's not finished.
The US president also said that it was a mistake to say that he wanted to put a bullseye on Republican nominee Donald Trump, further clarifying that it was merely a figure of speech and it is Trump himself who has mainstreamed violent rhetoric. During the interview, Biden also recounted a phone call he had with Trump and insisted that there is no place for violence in politics.
Secure.
But that did not stop the president from criticizing his political rival on other matters. Biden slammed U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon's decision to dismiss the classified documents case against Trump, calling the ruling suspicious or misleading. The NBC interview was scheduled before the assassination attempt on Trump and had been a part of the broader strategy to prove his fitness for office after growing concerns amongst Democrats and voters after the uneven and shaky performance at the US presidential debate. It remains to be seen how the incumbent leader's efforts play out in the next few days. A virtual vote of Democrats is scheduled to be held towards the end of this month. Referred to as a virtual roll call, the vote comes just weeks ahead of the Democratic National Convention in August. The goal of the meeting is to nominate Joe Biden before the August 19th convention. However, this event was planned much before the June 27th presidential debate. Ever since, pressure has mounted on Joe Biden to quit the race from lawmakers and financial backers alike. But the US president is adamant on staying in the race. During the interview, in fact, he pledged to meet Donald Trump for another presidential debate that's slated in September, adding that he does not plan on having another performance on the level that was witnessed during the presidential debate in Atlanta. Let's now shift focus to Peru. The country's political landscape might just witness a high-profile comeback. Convicted ex-president Alberto Fujimori plans to run for presidential elections in the year 2026. The announcement was made by his daughter, who ironically is fighting a trial on charge of corruption herself. The development puts the limelight back on the 85-year-old ex-president's political history. Fujimori had earlier fled the country and several allegations of corruption scandals and human rights violations were levied against him. In 2009, he was convicted of involvement in killing 25 Peruvians during his rule in 1992. He also had 3 convictions on corruption charges and owes about $15 million to the country's treasury. But his potential return has triggered mixed reactions. It has also raised doubts amid several experts who question the viability of his candidacy given Fujimori's previous convictions.
We all feel happy because it is to see our leader like the phoenix bird who returns once again to become a protagonist in Peruvian politics for the good of our nation.
Of course, they can make whatever announcements they want, but Alberto Fujimori does not have followers in the provinces.
Meanwhile, Keiko Fujimori, daughter of the former president, is being investigated for money laundering charges worth over $17 million during a stint as a presidential candidate. Now, Pakistan People's Party, or the PPP, which is a crucial ally of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, has distanced itself from the government's move to ban Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party. PPP's information secretary has said that Bilawal Bhutto Zardari's party was not consulted by Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, PMLN that is, over the matter. She also said that PPP would hold consultations on the government's decision. Not only that, another PPP leader and a minister in the Sindh government, Nasir Hussain Shah, says that his party is not in favour of banning any political party. He also confirmed that Shehbaz Sharif government did not consult PPP before imposing a ban on PTI. Meanwhile, PPP Senator Sherry Rahman in a TV program further validated both Marie and Shah's remarks and said that banning a party won't achieve anything. Even the PPP was subjected to these tactics in the past, but it continued to stand strong. The PPP's disapproval of imposing ban on PTI is significant as the party is a key ally of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's led government and the support of Bilawal Bhutto Zardari's party essential for its survival. Meanwhile, PTI leader Asad Kaisar has also said that his party, which is the largest single group in the National Assembly, can move a no-confidence motion against Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif once it secures enough seats. PTI has called on the allies of the ruling coalition government, including the PPP and also the MQMP, to clarify their position on the issue. All right, now let's look at some stories making headlines in the world of politics from across the globe. Police fired tear gas at dozens of demonstrators in Kenya's capital of Nairobi. Protesters have been calling for President William Ruto to step down. Activists led by young Gen Z Kenyans launched peaceful rallies a month ago against deeply unpopular tax hikes. But they transformed into deadly violence last month, prompting Ruto to drop the planned increases. Demonstrators are still demanding the president's resignation, with Tuesday's rallies using Ruto must go hashtag.
I just want my voice to be heard, and I just want the president to know that we don't want what he's doing. Like, the economy is just bad and we don't like it.
Over in United Kingdom, the First Minister of Wales has quit after just 4 months in office. Vaughan Gething's decision comes after a wave of ministerial resignations. The Zambian-born Gething became the first black head of the government in Europe in March, but has faced a turbulent time in office. He has been criticized over the source of a political donation and the issues over the COVID-19 inquiry when he was the health minister. Gething's departure triggers a second leadership contest in Wales this year. Plaid Cymru has ended a cooperation deal with Labour in Wales this May. That, remember, had triggered snap elections. And with that, we are wrapping up this edition of Race to Power. Thanks for watching with me, Ananya Datta. Goodbye.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays, 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.